Welcome to the distance learner students HSC program English 1 HSC 1852. Let's start. Today our lesson is two women. First one is Valentina Tereshkov, born on 6 March 1937. Valentina Tereshkova was born in the village Mesdenikovo, Tukhaevsky district in central Russia. Tereskov's father was a tractor driver and her mother worked in textile plant. Tereskova began school in 1945 at the age of 8, but left school in 1953 and continued her education through distance learning. Dear students, so distance learning is very interesting and it is very useful for us. She became interested in parachuting from a young age and trained in skydiving at the local aero club, making her first jump at age 22 on 21st May 1959. At that time, she was employed as a textile worker in a local factory. It was her expertise in skydiving that led to her selection as a cosmonaut after the flight of Uri Gagarin. After the flight of Yuri Gagarin, the first human being to travel to outer space in 1961, the Soviet Union decided to send a woman in space on 16 February 1962. Proletaria Valentina Tereskop was selected for this project from among more than 400 applicants. Tereskop had to undergo a series of training that included weightless flights, isolation tests, centrifuge tests, rocket theory, spacecraft engineering, 120 parachute jumps and pilot training in MiG-15 UTI jet fighters. Since the successful launch of the spacecraft Vostok 5 on 14 June 1963, Tereskop began preparing for her own flight. On the morning of 16 June 1963, Tereskop and her backup cosmonaut Solovayeva were dressed. Solovayeva were dressed in space suits and taken to the space shuttle launch pad by a bus. After completing her communications and life support checks, she was sealed inside Vostok 6, finishing a 2-hour countdown. Vostok 6 launched faultlessly. Although Tereskop experienced nausea and physical discomfort for much of the flight, she orbited the Earth 48 times and spent almost 3 days in space. With a single flight, she logged more flight time than the combined times of all American as astronauts who had flown before that date. Tereskop also maintained a flight long and took photographs of the horizon, which were later used to identify aerosol layers within the atmosphere. Vostok 6 was the final Vostok flight and was launched 2 days after Vostok 5, which carried Valery Bykovsky into a similar orbit for 5 days, landing 3 hours after Tereskop. The two vessels approached each other within 5 kilometers at one point, and from space, Tereskova communicated with Bykovsky and the Soviet leader Khrushchev by radio. Much later in 1977, Tereskov earned a doctorate in engineering from Zhukovsky Air Force Academy. Zhukovsky Air Force Academy. Afterwards, she turned to politics during the Soviet regime. She became one of the presidium members of the Supreme Soviet. Now, this living legend in a member in the lower house of the Russian legislature. On the 70th birthday, when she was invited by the Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin, she expressed her desire to fly to Mars, even if for a one-way trip. Thank you very much for distance learner students. See you will again.